I was Lauren Hale, 39, a certified public accountant in Westbrook, Arizona. At 8:31 p.m. on a Friday, red and blue washed across my blinds as a patrol car stopped in front of our house. My husband, Mark, froze beside me. Our 16-year-old son, Noah, had not come home. Officer Delgado asked the same questions I had asked myself for 2 hours. When did we last see him? 7:15 a.m., leaving with his backpack. Did he have a reason to run? No. He had a math test Monday, a shift at the pool kiosk Saturday, and a half-finished model airplane on the dining table. His phone stopped pinging the neighborhood tower at 4:07 p.m. Minutes after the school bus dropped him 3 streets away. Our doorbell camera showed no return. While the officer noted times and cross streets, my HOA group chat detonated. A post from Candace Bennett, 3 doors down, gathered comments fast. If anyone hears shouting at the Hales tonight, don't ignore it. Patterns matter. Then another I've seen bruises on that boy. I felt the words like ice. Candace chaired the Maple Crest HOA events committee. Ms. Hale, Officer Delgado said gently. We start at home because most disappearances are resolved there. I nodded. Logic was the language of my work and, tonight, of my fear. I opened Noah's desk. The ledger he used for allowance tracking lay open to a page of tidy entries, gas for mower, snacks, pool snacks again. No scribbles, no goodbye. At 9:02, another cruiser arrived. Sergeant Mills spoke to Mark outside. I stood in the doorway, counting things that should have been ordinary but felt like evident sneakers by the mat. The hum of the fridge. The house was unbroken, unbearably normal. Across the street, Candace's blinds were angled like narrowed eyes. Her husband, Roger, rolled their trash bin to the curb, though pickup was the next morning. A corner of a manila envelope peeked out, marked with a green sticker I recognized from HOA mailings. I filed the image away. Delgado returned from canvassing the block. A neighbor thought she saw Noah near the Greenbelt at 5, he said, checking his notebook. Light hoodie, gray shorts. That match, it did. Noah rotated the same few hoodies like talismans against everything he couldn't control. I can pull bus footage. I offered, and our HOA cameras cover the pool path. Maple Crest installed shared cameras last year when dues increased for safety improvements. The officers logged our doorbell access and left with photographs, consent forms, and my timeline. Mark rechecked the latches. I sat at the dining table with Noah's model airplane. Under the wing struts lay a folded receipt from Parker Hardware, time-stamped Thursday 7:42 p.m. He had bought epoxy and a pocket voice recorder. Noah was meticulous. He collected evidence before he spoke. I opened his laptop. The history showed 3 searches from late Thursday public meeting minutes, Maple Crest vendor list, and Greencrest Maintenance LLC. I knew the last name. Greencrest appeared in our HOA summaries as a recurring payee for landscape and incidentals. The address on their invoices pointed to a mailbox store off Bell Road. I felt the floor tilt. It was one thing to be a mother who was scared. It was another to be a CPA who recognized patterns. Dues had jumped 15% with little explanation. Candace ran events, yet she seemed to coordinate everything. Roger hauled their trash out early, and a green stickered envelope rode the top like a flag no one else noticed. Porch lights turned our street into a shallow aquarium. Comments kept piling onto Candace's post, neighbors promising vigilance, a few hinting at stories that never existed. I screenshotted everything and saved to a folder named Noah. We will account for every minute, I told Mark. Bus at 3:58. Tower ping at 4:07. Greenbelt sighting near 5. After that, nothing. Until we make something, he said. At 9:46, my phone vibrated with a new message from an unknown number. 3 words, no punctuation, don't dig further. The caller ID showed a number, routed through a relay app neighbors had complained about, the kind used to stir trouble and vanish online. I hardly slept that night. By dawn, the group chat had doubled with comments. What stunned me most wasn't the lies, it was how quickly neighbors believed them. A woman who had borrowed our ladder last month now typed, "He always looked withdrawn." Maybe Candace is right. Words like poison spread in seconds, and each one landed squarely on my chest. At 7:12 a.m., Officer Delgado called. "We've checked the bus footage. Noah stepped off at 3:58 yesterday, alone. After that, no confirmed sightings. If you recall anything unusual, any place he might go, please let us know." I gripped the phone tighter. Someone said they saw him at the Greenbelt around 5. Yes, we logged it. No camera coverage there. We'll canvass again. After hanging up, I opened my work laptop. Numbers were my language. If emotion clouded truth, records did not. I pulled the most recent HOA statements I had saved from my email. Dues collected this quarter, $84,000. Expenditures listed landscaping, security, social events. One vendor appeared repeatedly. Greencrest maintenance. Charges for $700, $800, $900, $400, or $80, $100 all within 6 weeks. Yet our neighborhood landscaping barely changed, save for a new layer of mulch dumped sloppily at the entrance. Mark walked in, pale, clutching his coffee like it was the last stable thing in his hand. "The Bennetts are outside again," he muttered. "Candace is talking to reporters now." I looked through the blinds. A local news van idled on the curb. Candace wore her HOA badge like a medal, gesturing dramatically. A microphone caught her words. "We've all been concerned." There were signs. My stomach turned. At 8:03, a text pinged from an unknown number. "Your son isn't missing. He's hiding. No signature, no punctuation." I forwarded it to Delgado immediately. By noon, Mark left to update Noah's aunt. I stayed, combing through Noah's room for any trace of a plan. Under his mattress, I found a flash drive labeled in his neat block letters HOA. My hands shook as I slid it into my laptop. 2 files. One was an audio clip, faint but clear enough, a man's voice, Roger Bennett, saying, "Just copy the invoice template. Nobody checks line items." The second file was a PDF, an exported table of HOA vendor payments, with dates highlighted. Someone had accessed HOA digital records and flagged every Greencrest charge. Noah's work. Tears stung my eyes. My son hadn't vanished because of some adolescent whim. He had stumbled into adult corruption. At 1:20 p.m., I drove to the mailbox store listed on Greencrest invoices. Unit 47, a rented box. A bored clerk confirmed. "Yeah, mail goes to a Roger B." She didn't need to say the rest. I snapped photos of the storefront, the unit roster, everything. Each detail built a case. When I returned, Mark sat rigid on the couch. Lauren. The Bennetts told Channel 8 that Noah confided in them about abuse. They're making it sound official. I clenched the flash drive. Then we counter with the truth. That evening, I emailed Officer Delgado the files, the mailbox photos, the suspicious charges. His reply came swift. "This gives us a new angle. Keep this secure. Do not confront them directly." At 9:15 p.m., another message appeared from the same relay number as before. "He knows too much. If you want him safe, stop digging." My breath caught. It wasn't rumor anymore. It was a warning. And it meant Noah was alive. By Saturday morning, the air in Maple Crest felt charged, like static before a storm. Our driveway still held the tire marks from the police cruisers. And every time I stepped outside, neighbors turned their heads just enough to show they were watching. At 10:02 a.m., Officer Delgado called again. We traced the anonymous texts to a relay app. No user data, but it pings from within your subdivision. Whoever sent those messages lives near you. The thought chilled me. Someone here knew where Noah was or what he'd uncovered. Mark paced the kitchen. "We can't just sit and wait. We won't," I said. I opened the HOA newsletter archive from my inbox. Each PDF Candace had sent out over the past year. Most were filled with cheery fonts, bake sales, and swimming pool updates. But tucked in the financial summaries, Greencrest's name appeared with mechanical regularity, always vague charges, general maintenance, incidentals, security upgrades. I compared them against my own spreadsheet. The totals didn't match the bank statements I'd kept from quarterly dues. Over $30,000 had evaporated. At 11:15, I walked to the curb with our recycling. Roger was in his yard trimming hedges that didn't need trimming. His eyes tracked me. On his porch, a large black contractor bag slumped against the rail. A corner had split, revealing shredded paper with green headers, the same design as our HOA invoices. He noticed my gaze and dragged the bag inside without a word. Back indoors, I called Delgado. If I can prove they're destroying records. Slow down, he cautioned. You're not law enforcement. We need probable cause before we can search. Focus on what you can document without crossing a line. So I did. At 1:40 p.m., I logged into the HOA's public portal, the one every resident had access to. Buried under upcoming projects was a draft agenda for next week's meeting. Item 4, vote on an additional $12,000 for Greencrest safety enhancements. No description, no breakdown. That evening, my sister Claire stopped by with groceries. She whispered as we unloaded them. Lauren, people are talking. Candace told me in confidence she thinks Noah ran because he was scared of you. My chest tightened. She's manufacturing a narrative. Claire hesitated. Do you have proof otherwise? I held up the flash drive, enough to show he discovered something dangerous. At 7:08 p.m., the porch camera alerted. A hooded figure darted to our mailbox and left a folded sheet of paper. By the time I opened the door, the street was empty. The note was written in hurried strokes. He's safe for now. But they watch the greenbelt. Don't go alone. Mark's jaw clenched. Someone inside this neighborhood is playing both sides. I scanned the words again. The warning wasn't random. It meant Noah was hiding, still nearby, and someone knew his movements. I placed the note beside the invoices and the audio clip. Each piece forming a puzzle, I told Mark quietly. If Noah saw what I think he did, this isn't just about missing money. It's about people willing to risk everything to keep their secret buried. And now we had confirmation that he was alive but also under threat. Sunday morning began with the thud of a newspaper against our driveway. I picked it up and froze at the headline, Teen Missing in Maplecrest Neighbors Raise Concerns. The article quoted Candace directly, We've long worried about Noah. It breaks my heart, but sometimes the truth hides behind closed doors. Our family photo, cropped from last year's HOA barbecue, stared back at me under the caption, Family Under Scrutiny. By 9:00 a.m., calls from relatives poured in, each one blending worry with subtle doubt. Every ring was another crack driven into our reputation. I shut my phone off and opened my laptop. If public opinion was turning, facts were the only shield left. I dug deeper into Greencrest. State records showed it registered as an LLC 3 years ago with no listed employees, only a PR box, Its listed business type was general services. The annual report fees were paid in cash at a local clerk's office, signed by R. Bennett, the same Roger trimming his hedges yesterday. At 10:34, Mark returned from a walk, his face strained. Lauren, I saw something. Behind the Bennett's garage, the window was cracked open. Inside, there's a metal cabinet with folders stacked. Looked like financials. Could you photograph it? I didn't dare. Roger was in the yard. We were treading a line. Delgado's warning echoed no trespass, yet the evidence sat right there. At 12:10, a message arrived from the relay number again. He saw the files. That's why he ran. Stop or he disappears forever. I read it aloud to Mark. They admit Noah saw something. They're panicking. he said. That means we're close. By mid-afternoon, I compiled a dossier screenshots of HOA charges, the mailbox photo, the LLC record, the audio clip, the anonymous notes. Each piece carried timestamps and sources. I sent the folder to Delgado with the subject line, probable cause. At 4:22 p.m., Delgado called back. This is more than a domestic dispute. I'll escalate to the financial crimes unit. But until we locate Noah, we can't move fast enough. That evening, I sat by the window watching shadows lengthen. At 6:45, motion triggered our porch camera again. This time, the hooded figure left something heavier than paper. I opened the door to find a small duffel bag. Inside were granola bars, a water bottle, and Noah's school ID. Mark's voice shook. That's his. The note inside was shorter than the rest. He's alive. He's hiding near the lake cabin. But they're closing in. I felt my pulse hammering in my throat. Noah wasn't gone into the void. He was close, terrified, starving, and watching enemies who wanted him silent. I whispered to Mark, tomorrow, we go to the lake, and we don't go alone. Monday dawned gray, a thin veil of clouds muting the desert sun. I packed a thermos of coffee, granola bars, and a flashlight, small preparations for what felt like war. At 8:15 a.m., Officer Delgado called. We've reviewed your dossier, he said. It's compelling, but we can't search without direct evidence of Noah's location. If you get anything concrete, call me immediately. Concrete. The word rang in my ears as Mark and I drove toward the lake cabin trail. I had printed the last note and circled the words near the lake cabin. It was the closest thing to a map Noah could give us. At 9:02, we parked near the trailhead. A ranger station stood empty, its bulletin board plastered with outdated fishing advisories. I slipped on gloves habitual to avoid leaving prints, and we hiked into the trees. The desert thinned into a pocket of cottonwoods, the path narrowing with every step. Mark spotted it first, a discarded energy drink can, dented but recent. 10 feet beyond, a pile of granola bar wrappers. My throat tightened. Noah had been here. At 9:46, we reached the old storage cabin. Its padlock hung broken, door slightly ajar. Inside, dust layered everything except one corner where a sleeping bag, backpack, and empty water jugs lay. The air held the faint scent of Noah's cologne, the one he sprayed on his hoodies until they practically glowed. I knelt by the sleeping bag and found a spiral notebook tucked beneath it. On the first page, in Noah's slanted handwriting, if they find this. It means I couldn't get away. My chest clenched. The next pages contained his notes. He had overheard Roger on the phone saying, transfer the HOA funds by Friday. Use Greencrest. Nobody will trace it. Another line chilled me. Candace said if anyone finds out, she'll bury them in paperwork and smear campaigns. At 10:12, a twig snapped outside. Mark stiffened. Through the window, I saw movement, 2 figures in dark jackets standing near the trail. Too far to recognize, but too still to be hikers. My skin prickled. We didn't linger. I stuffed the notebook into my bag, snapped photos of the sleeping area, and we slipped out the back. By the time we reached the car, the figures were gone, as if they had evaporated into the trees. At 11:05, I called Delgado from the safety of the vehicle. We found his hideout. We have his notes, his belongings. He was right here. Delgado's tone sharpened. Do not go back alone. I'll dispatch a team. Stay put. Back home. I laid the notebook beside Noah's flash drive, the shredded invoices, the warning notes. Each piece tied the Bennetts closer to fraud, closer to my son's fear. At 5:20 p.m., as twilight set in, a text buzzed my phone. Same relay app. You were at the cabin. Next time, you won't walk out. For the first time, it wasn't just about Noah. Now, they were coming for me. Tuesday morning. I sat at the dining table with Noah's notebook open, every page photographed and stored in 3 separate drives. Mark hovered near the window, watching for any movement outside. Neither of us spoke much. The weight of what we carried was enough. At 8:27 a.m., Officer Delgado arrived with another detective, Ramirez, from Financial Crimes. They examined the flash drive, the notebook, and the shredded invoice photos. Ramirez flipped through the pages, nodding slowly. This isn't just sloppy bookkeeping. This is deliberate skimming, and your son risked everything documenting it. Delgado met my eyes. We're moving this up, but understand Candace and Roger will fight back. They'll try to discredit you, maybe even Noah, once he resurfaces. By mid-morning, the neighborhood buzzed louder than cicadas. Candace had posted another update to the HOA group chat. Police are wasting time on conspiracy theories while a boy suffers. Remember who the real victims are, the community. Attached was a grainy photo of me leaving the mailbox store Saturday, framed to look furtive. Mark cursed under his breath. She's turning everything upside down. I steadied myself. Then we'll flip it back with facts. At 11:03, Ramirez confirmed the bank trail. Greencrest deposits led straight into an account controlled by Roger. The amounts line up with the missing HOA funds. He paused. This is more than enough for a warrant. Relief swept through me, brief but real, until at 1:14 p.m., a delivery arrived at our porch. No return address, just a plain box. Inside lay Noah's hoodie, crumpled and smelling of smoke. A note pinned to the collar read, "Proof he's with us. Stop before it's too late." Mark's hands shook as he held the fabric. They've got him. But I knew better. The hoodie was the same one missing from the cabin. It reeked of fear theater and intimidation ploy. They wanted us paralyzed. At 3:40, Delgado texted search warrant in process. Tomorrow evening we move. Tomorrow. One more day. That night. I sat by Noah's model airplane. Its wings were half painted, brush strokes steady and careful. My son wasn't reckless. He was precise, methodical. He wouldn't give up now. At 9:52, another message appeared from the Relay app. You think the police can protect you. You don't know what we've buried. I stared at the screen, my pulse pounding. They were right about one thing. Something bigger was still hidden. And if I didn't uncover it before tomorrow, Noah's notes might only be the beginning of a darker ledger. Wednesday began with lists. I wrote them in columns, evidence, timelines. Witnesses then photographed each page and uploaded copies to 2 cloud drives and a thumb drive in my purse. If fear blurred memory later, paper and metadata would hold. At 8:06 a.m., Detective Ramirez called. Bank subpoenas came back. Greencrest deposits route to an account controlled by Roger Bennett, then dispersed to a second account under a different LLC, MC Social Solutions. Same mailing address as the Bennett's P.Your.Num box, MC, as in Maplecrest, I said. Looks that way. We're preparing charges. But we still need Noah located or a direct tie between the Bennetts and witness intimidation. He paused. And we're not broadcasting the timing of our search. Assume they don't know. I assumed nothing. Candace had already turned rumor into a weapon, and rumor travels faster than paperwork. At 9:22, our front camera registered Mr. Patel from 2 doors down. He held his phone like it might burn him. I didn't want to get involved, he said quietly, but my wife insisted. He airdropped me a doorbell clip from 11:37 p.m. Monday, Roger rolling a lidded storage tote from the garage to his SUV. The tote's side bore a Greencrest label, timestamp, GPS, device ID all intact. I thanked him and immediately forwarded the file to Ramirez, adding the metadata screenshot. At 10:05, I logged into the public HOA portal to download last year's budgets for my dossier. A banner announced, in pastel teal. Community Health and Safety Week. I opened the events page out of habit and froze. There, scheduled for 6:30 p.m. Tonight was a private item Candace had posted to the board calendar, but forgotten to mark hidden from residents' document services truck garage side. The vendor name read Desert Secure Shredding. I took screenshots, saved the page to PDF, and hit print. Then I picked up the phone. Detective Ramirez. This is time sensitive. The board calendar shows a shredding truck at the Bennett's garage at 6:30 p.m. tonight. It's visible to all residents, likely a mistake, but it means they're clearing records today. He inhaled audibly. Forward everything. We'll move up our schedule. A beat. Do not approach them. Ms. Hale. I forwarded the files and returned to the portal. The calendar entry vanished. Someone had fixed the visibility. My printed copy still warmed the tray. I slid it into my evidence folder with the timestamp from the printer log. At noon. Mark returned from the hardware store with a pack of external drives. Backups for the backups, he said, attempting a smile that didn't reach his eyes. We ate in silence until my phone buzzed with an email bounce from Candace. One of my earlier replies to her rumor thread had failed because she'd limited comments. I opened the original post. She had edited it again. We have scheduled a professional records review this evening to protect the community. Please keep the area clear for safety. No vendor named, no location specified, but the timing matched. I copied the text into my timeline and annotated in the margin correlates with shredding truck. At 1:18, Delgado texted. Search moved to late afternoon. Stay inside. Units staging away from subdivision to avoid alert. Logic told me this change meant risk. Logic also told me it meant momentum. I rechecked my binder, Noah's audio file, Noah's notebook, the mailbox store photos, the Green Crest payments, Mr. Patel's clip, the calendar screenshots. For each, I had source, date, time, and an unbroken chain from original file to current copy. At 2:07, my email chimed with an unexpected notification. Lauren, you've been added to a QuickBooks Online company, Maple Crest Activities. I stared, then scrolled. The invitation was sent last month to a resident distribution list for volunteer auditors during an event budgeting push. My address had been included by accident, then the invite never rescinded. I clicked accept, half expecting a block. The dashboard loaded. The chart of accounts was sparse, but the classes told the story: events, landscaping, safety enhancements, and hiding at the bottom GC transfers. Within GC transfers, dozens of journal entries moved money from dues collected into Greencrest maintenance, then from events back to a cash account labeled MCSS. Each entry carried a memo field reclass per CB, Candace Bennett. I recorded my screen, scrolled slowly, and exported the registers to PDF. I did not change a field. I did not click edit, and I logged out. The invitation might be a trap. The data was still data. At 3:11, Ramirez called. I spoke before he could. I have internal ledgers. GC transfers with memos annotated per CB. It ties Candace to the reclassifications. Send now, he said. Voice clipped. We're minutes out. I compressed the files, attached the screen recording, and hit send. Mark peeked through the blinds. 2 SUVs just passed, unmarked. I stood very still, feeling the house hold its breath around us. If tonight ended the way I prayed it would, the paper and the pixels on my dining table would matter. If it didn't, they would be the map for whoever came after me. At 3:29 p.m., my phone buzzed once more from the relay number. 4 words this time, each like a stone. Too late to save him. By 3:42 p.m., sirens stayed silent, but I felt their presence anyway. 2 unmarked vehicles parked out of sight down Juniper Lane, staging like Ramirez had promised. I kept my curtains angled, every movement in the cul-de-sac logged on my pad. At 4:05, the shredding truck arrived. White cab, blue lettering, Desert Secure Shredding. It backed into the Bennett's driveway with mechanical precision. Roger guided it like a conductor, gesturing sharply, while Candace hovered near the garage door holding a clipboard. My camera caught every frame from our upstairs window. Inside my house, Mark whispered. That's destruction of evidence right in front of us. I nodded but didn't move closer. Delgado's words repeated, "Do not confront them." Instead, I sent a time-stamped photo set to Ramirez. He replied within 2 minutes, "Hold position. Warrant team advancing." By 4:18, uniformed officers approached on foot, fanning out discreetly between houses. The shredding truck driver, oblivious, opened the side panel where bags of documents waited. That's when Candace spotted movement at the end of the block. Her posture stiffened, and she barked something at Roger. He slammed the garage door down halfway, trapping 2 totes beneath it. From my vantage, I caught a glimpse of what spilled binders, each with HOA stickers. One binder cracked open, showing rows of invoices. At 4:24, the first officer called out, "Police, step away from the materials." The scene shifted instantly. Roger bolted toward the garage's side door, clutching a folder. Candace thrust the clipboard at the officer, shouting about community property and board privilege. The shredding truck driver raised his hands in confusion. I recorded everything, my phone vibrating nonstop with motion alerts. At 4:29, Delgado himself appeared, warrant in hand, his voice firm. "This is a lawful search. Stand down." Candace's face reddened. She screeched about harassment, about conspiracy, about neighbors poisoning our good name. Every word was captured by at least 3 body cameras and by me from across the street. Roger didn't get far. 2 officers intercepted him before he reached the side gate. The folder he carried spilled open onto the driveway, a ledger marked MCSS transfers. Pages fluttered in the desert breeze before an officer collected them in evidence bags. My pulse pounded, but I forced myself to keep documenting. Logic demanded it every timestamp. Every chain of custody mattered. At 4:41, something unexpected happened. From across the yard, a muffled thump echoed. One of the officers near the garage paused, then signaled. Within seconds, 2 more officers lifted the half-closed garage door and shined flashlights inside. From my window, I couldn't see what they found, only the sudden surge of urgency in their movements. Delgado barked into his radio. Candace screamed louder, insisting they had no right. Roger cursed, thrashing against the cuffs. Mark's voice was a whisper. "Lauren, look." I followed his gaze. Across the garage, between stacks of storage bins, officers pulled open a locked cabinet. One leaned inside, then recoiled. He called another officer over. The cabinet door swung wider, and for a heartbeat I glimpsed what lay within a bundle of personal belongings: a hoodie, a water bottle, a school binder with Noah Hale scrawled in black marker. My legs nearly gave out. At 4:52, Delgado's voice carried across the cul-de-sac. "Secure the area. Call medical. We may have a juvenile." Neighbors spilled from their porches, phones out, recording. The rumor mill that Candace had weaponized was now watching her unravel in real time. I gripped the windowsill, every muscle trembling. They had found Noah's things. Not just invoices, not just ledgers proof he had been inside that garage. The warning texts weren't empty threats. My son had been closer to the Bennetts than I ever imagined. And if his belongings were here, then where was Noah himself? By 5:03 p.m., the cul-de-sac had transformed into a command post. Patrol cars blocked each end of the street, their silent lights pulsing red and blue against stucco walls. Neighbors huddled in clusters, whispering, phones raised, trying to capture pieces of the chaos. I stood at the upstairs window, my notebook open, documenting every timestamp. Logic kept me steady if I recorded facts. The swirl of fear couldn't sweep me away. At 5:09, Detective Ramirez crossed our lawn and signaled for me to step outside. I tucked my phone into my pocket and met him on the porch. "We need to confirm," he said. His tone clipped. "These items," he pointed toward an evidence bag being carried across the street, "are your son's. Inside the bag was Noah's binder, The same one he used for chemistry homework, stickers still peeling at the edges. My throat tightened. Yes, that's his. Ramirez nodded. This strengthens probable cause for unlawful detention. But we haven't located him yet. Did he ever mention another hiding place? I shook my head. Just the lake cabin. And you saw what he wrote in the notebook. He was afraid of them. Ramirez's radio crackled before he could reply. Unit 4 negative on second floor. Cabinet secure. No juvenile located. The words punched through me. They'd found his belongings, but not Noah. At 5:17, Delgado approached Candace, who was still shouting about due process. Mrs. Bennett, he said, voice even. Where is the boy? Her response cut through the murmurs of the crowd. Maybe you should be asking his parents why he ran away in the first place. The venom in her tone sparked audible gasps from neighbors. I recorded every second. Roger, restrained by 2 officers, spat on the driveway. You're all blind. This is nothing but accounting tricks. Nobody's missing here. But the ledger he'd dropped MCSS transfers sat in an evidence bag, its neat rows of numbers visible even through plastic. Logic screamed louder than his denial. At 5:34, the shredding truck driver gave a sworn statement to Ramirez. He explained he had been contracted a week earlier by Candace B. and told to destroy old board files. He'd never been informed those files were under police investigation. His voice shook as he signed the statement, realizing he'd been used as cover for obstruction. Meanwhile, officers expanded the search radius around the Bennett's property. They checked sheds, crawl spaces, and the alley behind the garages. Each minute felt like a lifetime stretched thin. By 5:52, Delgado returned to me with an update. Noah isn't here. But his possessions prove he was held, or at least stashed here recently. That changes our operational scope. We'll widen search perimeters tonight. I forced myself to breathe steadily. Facts, not panic. What about the financial records? I asked. Ramirez held up a thick evidence bag filled with binders. Plenty. Enough to show systematic skimming. But Candace won't break easily. She's built her reputation on controlling narratives. He was right. Even as officers carried out boxes of records, Candace turned to the gathered neighbors and declared, "This is a witch hunt. When the truth comes out, you'll see we were protecting this community." Some neighbors looked uneasy. Others folded their arms, skeptical now. Her grip on the story was slipping. At 6:08, Delgado's radio buzzed again. Unit 6 reporting possible juvenile sighting near the East Greenbelt. Male, gray hoodie, moving fast. My chest seized. Ramirez met my eyes. Stay here. We'll confirm. He jogged toward his vehicle, officers converging in the direction of the Greenbelt. Mark gripped my arm. Lauren, if that's him, I know. I whispered. It means he's still alive, and it means he escaped. The sun dipped low, painting the neighborhood in long shadows. Sirens wailed faintly in the distance, moving east. At 6:19, my phone buzzed. A new message from the relay number lit the screen. He won't survive another night on his own. I stared at the words until they blurred. Noah had been here. He had run. And now, somewhere between the truth and the lies, my son was still fighting to stay alive. By Wednesday night, Maple Crest no longer felt like a neighborhood. It was a stage lit by police cruisers, with every porch a spectator's box. I hadn't slept since Friday, but adrenaline kept me upright. At 7:04 p.m., Delgado returned with an update. The sighting at the East Greenbelt was credible. A neighbor's camera caught someone matching Noah's description, but he disappeared into the drainage culvert. We've deployed K9 units. My knees wobbled. That means he's running from them, not from us. Delgado's expression was grim. It also means they may be closing in. We'll expand the perimeter, but the best chance of drawing him out is here home. After he left, I gathered every neighbor still milling on the street. The whispers of suspicion had lost force after the search, but doubt still lingered. I raised my voice, holding up the evidence folder. For days, you've listened to rumors, but tonight you saw the truth. The Bennetts hid Noah's belongings in their garage. They funneled our dues through fake vendors, and they tried to destroy the proof right under your eyes. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Mrs. Patel stepped forward. I saw the shredding truck. I saw them block the garage. She's right. Others nodded reluctantly. Candace, handcuffed near the patrol car, sneered. She's manipulating you. Just wait until the lawyers tear this apart. Her defiance rang hollow against the evidence bags piling in the back of Ramirez's SUV. Still, the damage she'd sown lingered. Some neighbors avoided my gaze, uncertain where loyalty lay. At 8:20, Delgado called a community briefing at the elementary school gym. Folding chairs filled quickly, residents buzzing like hornets. Mark and I sat near the front, surrounded by a wall of stairs. On the stage, Ramirez presented the recovered ledgers, photographs of Greencrest invoices, and screenshots of digital transfers. His voice carried the authority Candace had wielded for years, but now the narrative was no longer hers. The evidence shows systematic diversion of HOA funds into accounts controlled by Roger and Candace Bennett, Ramirez explained. Charges include fraud, conspiracy, and obstruction. But the immediate priority remains locating Noah Hale, who we believe is a witness to these activities. A man in the back raised his hand. Are you saying they had the boy that's kidnapping? Delgado stepped forward. We have reason to believe his belongings were kept in their garage. Until we confirm his condition, every resource is being used to find him. The gym buzzed with shock, disbelief, and outrage. For the first time in days, I felt the tide shifting, not just suspicion, but solidarity. Then, at 8:57, the gym doors burst open. An officer entered, speaking quickly into Delgado's ear. His face hardened. He tapped the microphone. We have an update. Units at the drainage culvert found traces of Noah's backpack and shoe prints heading toward the storm tunnel. We need to evacuate this meeting and coordinate. Chairs screeched across the floor as neighbors rose. Panic fluttered like wings against the ceiling. Mark squeezed my hand. If he's in that tunnel, he's moving. That means he's alive, I whispered, forcing myself to breathe. Back outside, the cul-de-sac became a flood of headlights as residents dispersed. Police convoys rolled east toward the drainage system. I stood on the curb, staring into the darkness beyond the streetlights, imagining Noah navigating the maze beneath our feet. At 9:22, my phone buzzed again with the Relay app. This time, the message was longer. You've turned the neighborhood against us. If he speaks, we all go down. You won't get him back alive. My stomach clenched. They weren't bluffing anymore. This was a declaration of war. And as the police lights vanished into the distance, I knew the next 24 hours would decide not just Noah's survival, but the fate of every lie Candace had spun to bind Maple Crest in her grip. By Thursday morning, Maple Crest looked like a crime scene stitched into suburbia. Yellow tape cordoned off the Bennett's property, and news vans lined the entrance to our subdivision. Reporters angled cameras toward any resident willing to speak, their questions sharp as blades. Did you suspect abuse? Did you see the boy? Did you know about the fraud? I stayed inside, curtains drawn, compiling a chronology for Delgado. Logic demanded order. Friday. Noah vanished. Saturday, the first anonymous text. Sunday, the lake cabin discovery. Wednesday, the shredding truck. Warrant. Belongings found. Each entry anchored me against the chaos. At 9:14 a.m., Ramirez arrived with a printed warrant affidavit for my review. Your timeline corroborates our case, he said. The judge approved, expanded search authority for properties tied to the Bennett's LLCs. That includes off-site storage. I scanned the affidavit. Every line was meticulous dates, exhibits, witness statements. It was the kind of document I trusted, the language of accountability, What about Noah? I asked. Delgado answered from the doorway. We tracked his shoe prints through the storm tunnel. They exited near the service road 2 miles east. After that, the trail goes cold. Mark leaned against the counter, arms folded. So he's out there alone, hungry, scared. We're working with search and rescue teams, Delgado said firmly. But if he's moving, he's staying ahead of them. That suggests he knows they're hunting him. At 11:03, the HOA board, what remained of it, was summoned to the gym for an emergency session. I attended, binder in hand. The room buzzed with tension, folding chairs filled with residents who had once whispered against me. Now they stared at Candace's empty seat, guarded by the weight of her absence. Ramirez presented a slideshow of evidence transfers, invoices, photos of Noah's belongings in the Bennett's garage. Each slide built a chain of logic impossible to ignore. Gasps rippled through the room as dollar amounts stacked higher, as signatures marked CB scrolled across the screen. Mrs. Patel rose, voice shaking. You told us our dues kept this neighborhood safe, but you stole from us, and you lied about that boy. Her words unlocked a flood. Others shouted agreements, some demanded restitution, others demanded resignations. For the first time, Candace's narrative crumbled under the collective weight of fact. At 12:45, just as the meeting teetered on chaos, a phone rang at the front table. It was Delgado's. He listened, face taut, then silenced the room. A jogger on the service road reported seeing a teenage boy matching Noah's description around noon. He was headed toward the old water treatment plant. Units are en route. The room erupted in murmurs, half relief, half fear. I gathered my things, but Delgado intercepted me. Stay here. It's not safe for you to be in the field. I bit down the urge to argue. Logic prevailed if Noah was found. He would need someone steady, not frantic. At 2:12, another text appeared on my phone from the relay number. Final warning. If he talks at that plant, you'll regret it. The phrasing chilled me. They knew the search perimeter. They knew where he was heading. That meant someone outside custody was still feeding them information. By 3:00, the meeting dissolved. Residents poured out, some angry, some shaken. All changed. I lingered by the stage, staring at the stack of invoices projected larger than life. Proof was no longer the problem. Protection was. Mark slipped beside me. They're cornered. That makes them dangerous. I nodded. And Noah is the only witness who can put the final nail in their story. At 4:05, Delgado returned with fresh urgency. We've got movement at the plant. Tracks confirm he was there. We're deploying a tactical unit. My pulse thundered. The evidence had pulled Candace's empire apart, but the war wasn't finished. Somewhere beyond the concrete walls of Maple Crest, my son was still running, and the people who wanted him, silenced, were closing in. By 4:32 p.m., the old water treatment plant loomed against the horizon like a skeleton of concrete and rust. Its towers had been decommissioned for a decade, but the chain-link fence surrounding it sagged in places where teenagers had long cut paths through. Now it was a hunting ground, police against shadows. From our living room, I followed the updates through Delgado's encrypted texts. Unit inside main building, signs of occupancy. No juvenile yet. Each message came like a breath held and released. At 5:01, another buzz. Backpack found. Contents: water bottle, granola wrappers, spiral notebook with initials N.H. My throat tightened. He had been there, recently. Mark paced the length of the room. If they've been trailing him, they could be inside with him right now. We don't know that, I whispered, though logic told me it was possible. The relay texts proved someone still at large, someone with access to the search perimeter. At 5:19, Delgado called directly. His voice was sharp, no longer tempered. Mrs. Hale, we need to prepare you. If we recover Noah, he may be in shock. He may resist identifying himself until he sees you. Stay on standby. I clutched the phone. Just bring him home. The minutes dragged until 5:47 when another text arrived, not from Delgado, but from the relay number. He's ours. You'll see the truth at sunset. My blood iced. Sunset was less than an hour away. At 6:05, the news vans at the subdivision entrance suddenly roared to life, reporters spilling out with cameras. A rumor spread through the crowd police had located a boy inside the plant. Neighbors gathered on porches, torn between curiosity and dread. I forced myself to remain calm, anchoring to facts. The notebook at the cabin, the binders in the garage, the backpack at the plant. Each was a breadcrumb, a trail Noah had left not by accident, but with intent. He wanted to be found, and he wanted the truth carried forward. At 6:22, headlights flared outside. Delgado's SUV screeched to a halt, dust rising. He strode to our porch, jaw set. They found him. Mark grabbed my arm. "Is he alive?" Delgado said quickly, but shaken. He was hiding in a sub-level room. "We need you both to come, carefully. He's asking for his mother." The ride to the plant blurred into fragments, sirens bouncing off canyon walls, radios crackling with coded updates, the smell of dust through the vents. When we arrived, floodlights bathed the plant's entrance in sterile white. Officers ringed the perimeter. Inside, the air was heavy with mildew. I followed Delgado down a concrete stairwell into the sublevel. At the far end, seated on an overturned bucket, was Noah. His hoodie was torn, face streaked with dirt, but his eyes locked onto mine with such clarity that everything else vanished. "Mom," he croaked. I crossed the room in seconds, pulling him into my arms. He trembled, but he was real, solid, alive. "They tried to keep me quiet," he whispered against my shoulder. "They said if I talked, they'd bury me." I brushed his hair back. "You're safe now. You don't have to hide anymore." But even as relief surged, Delgado's words cut through. "Mrs. Hale." We intercepted 2 more individuals entering the plant from the east side, associates of the Bennetts. They were carrying boxes. We believe they were here to move or destroy remaining records. My gaze tightened on Noah, his notebook pages, his flash drive. The binders, they had been fragments of a larger puzzle, and now the missing piece lay in boxes the accomplices carried. At 6:58, officers marched the 2 men past us in cuffs, the boxes sealed in evidence bags. Noah squeezed my hand. "That's what I saw. Mom. Those boxes. That's why they came after me." The last rays of sun slanted through the broken windows, casting long shadows across the floor. The truth was no longer whispers in a boy's notebook. It was evidence stacked in plain sight, guarded by law, yet Candace's words echoed in my head, her shrill promise as she was led away, "You haven't seen the whole of it." And I realized this wasn't the end of the confrontation. It was only the beginning of their unraveling. Thursday night blurred into Friday morning, the hours measured not by sleep, but by interviews. Detectives cycled through, each with a recorder, each with questions designed to lock every fact into the chain of custody. Noah sat beside me, a blanket over his shoulders, answering carefully. His voice trembled at times, but his details never wavered. At 8:12 a.m., he repeated the same phrase he had written in his notebook at the cabin I saw them moving boxes. Candace told Roger nobody would check the invoices if they kept the descriptions vague. Delgado's pen paused on that line, circling it twice. By 9 Ezruor, Noah was taken for a medical evaluation. The doctor confirmed exhaustion, mild dehydration, and bruises consistent with scrambling through tunnels and rough ground, but no serious injuries. Relief washed through me like air after suffocation. Meanwhile, Ramirez assembled the evidence in chronological order. He laid the pieces across the conference table at the precinct, like a puzzle finally coming together. On one end, invoices, ledgers, the GC transfers entries annotated per CB. In the center, photographs of the shredding truck, the binders, and Noah's belongings from the Bennett's garage. At the far end, the boxes seized from the water plant, each stamped with Maple Crest HOA seals. "This isn't just fraud," Ramirez said at 10:24. "It's conspiracy to commit fraud, obstruction, and unlawful detention of a minor. The total diverted exceeds $150,000. We'll push for maximum penalties." Mark sat with his arms folded, eyes red. They were ready to destroy everything. If Noah hadn't written it all down, he saved the case. Ramirez finished. Without his timeline, we'd still be circling rumors. At 11:40, the county prosecutor arrived, a woman named Harris with sharp eyes and a clipped tone. She flipped through the ledger pages, nodding occasionally, then looked at me. "You're prepared to testify that the Bennetts smeared you, fabricated abuse claims, and attempted to obstruct by intimidation?" "Yes," I said without hesitation. "And I have the screenshots, the messages, every timestamp." She turned to Delgado. "We'll draft formal charges today. Detention hearing this afternoon. By noon, news outlets ran breaking banners, Maple Crest HOA leaders arrested on fraud charges. Reporters camped outside the courthouse, clips of Candace shouting about witch hunts replayed on every station. The narrative had flipped, but the damage to reputation's ours most of all was still raw. At 1:18, Delgado escorted us into the courthouse through a side entrance. The hallway smelled of paper and coffee, sterile but safe. Noah clung to my arm, silent but steady. Inside the courtroom, Candace and Roger sat with their attorney. She wore the same defiant expression she had worn in the cul-de-sac. Chin lifted like arrogance could shield her from the evidence stacked against her. Roger's jaw worked, his cuffed hands resting on the table. The judge read the charges aloud: fraud, conspiracy, obstruction of justice, unlawful detention of a minor. Each word dropped like a hammer. When unlawful detention echoed through the room, Candace's composure cracked, her eyes darting toward Noah. He stared back, unflinching. At 2:05, the prosecutor presented the timeline dues collected, payments to Green Crest, transfers into MC Social Solutions, evidence of concealment, the attempted shredding. Then she played Noah's audio clip of Roger's voice. "Just copy the invoice template." "Nobody checks line items," the courtroom murmured. Candace's attorney objected, citing misinterpretation by a minor, but Harris countered with the ledgers annotated per CB. The initials were undeniable. At 2:42, the judge denied bail, citing risk of tampering and community intimidation. Candace gasped as deputies moved to escort her out. She turned once more toward the gallery, her voice shrill. "You think this ends here. You don't know how deep it goes." But her words sounded less like power and more like desperation. As she was led away, Noah gripped my hand tighter. For the first time in a week, his whisper carried hope. "Mom, they can't hurt us anymore." I wanted to believe it. Yet Candace's warning clung to me like smoke, because unfinished secrets always leave residue. Friday afternoon bled into evening under a haze of fluorescent lights and paperwork. In the courthouse annex, reporters clustered like vultures outside the glass doors, their microphones pressed against the barrier. Every few minutes, one would shout questions. Did the HOA president really embezzle funds, or is the missing boy safe inside? Noah sat with Detective Ramirez, giving a recorded statement. His words were calm now, steadier than the night before. I saw Candace sign papers, and I heard Roger say the invoices were fake. They kept the boxes in their garage. When I tried to get proof, they told me if I talked, I'd regret it. "That's why I ran," Ramirez asked gently. "Did they ever physically harm you?" Noah shook his head. "They didn't need to. They scared me enough. They told everyone my parents were hurting me. I didn't know who would believe me if I came back." My chest tightened. Lies had been their weapon of choice, sharper than chains, more suffocating than walls. At 6:22 p.m., Prosecutor Harris entered with a new folder of documents. "The boxes seized from the water plant are gold. Full ledgers, board minutes, and even drafts of falsified newsletters. It shows intent, not just sloppy accounting. We'll bring conspiracy and racketeering charges now. Mark exhaled in relief. That means they'll never touch this neighborhood again. Legally, yes, Harris replied. But socially, the community has scars. Rebuilding trust takes longer than court orders. By 7:15, we were escorted home under police watch. Our street was quieter now. Reporters held back at the subdivision entrance, but neighbors lingered on porches. Some offered hesitant waves, others avoided our eyes, ashamed of having believed Candace's stories. At 7:40, Mrs. Patel knocked softly, carrying a tray of food. Her hands trembled. "I'm sorry. Lauren." I repeated what Candace said without thinking. "I should have asked you first." I took the tray, meeting her gaze. "Fear makes people believe lies faster than truth. But thank you for telling me now." As she left, Noah whispered, "They all thought I was lying." I cupped his cheek. "Not anymore. You told the truth, and you kept notes, even when you were terrified. That's why they're going to prison." By 9:00, Delgado texted with the official update both Bennetts had been transferred to county detention. Bail denied. The charges included fraud, conspiracy, racketeering, and unlawful detention. Trial preparations would begin within weeks. Relief should have felt final, but it was tangled with exhaustion. I sat at the dining table, staring at the evidence binder still open, when Noah placed his half-finished model airplane on top of it. "I didn't get to finish it," he said softly. "You will, I promised, piece by piece, just like this neighborhood will." At 10:12, my phone buzzed again. Not from Delgado, not from Ramirez. Another message from the Relay app. My heart lurched until I read it. "Thank you. You saved more than just your son." The sender was anonymous, no way to trace. But the words struck deep. Somewhere in Maple Crest. Someone else had been silent under Candace's reign. Someone who had feared speaking out. Now, freed by her downfall. They had chosen gratitude. I showed the message to Mark. He frowned. "Do you think it's another threat?" "No," I said slowly. "It feels like a neighbor who finally feels safe." We sat together in the quiet. Noah between us. The hum of the refrigerator the only sound. For the first time in days, the air didn't feel poisoned. At 11:05, I wrote one final line in my own notebook, "The truth survived." And so did he. Yet, even as I closed the binder, Candace's last words replayed in my mind. "You don't know how deep it goes." And I knew tomorrow, when the cameras faded and the court dates loomed, the real question wouldn't be about Candace's guilt. It would be about how much corruption had been buried under Maple Crest's perfect lawns and whether we were ready to dig it all up. Saturday morning, Maple Crest was unrecognizable. The cul-de-sac that once echoed with suspicion now brimmed with reporters packing up their vans. Yellow tape came down from the Bennett's driveway, replaced by a "For Sale Pending Court Approval" sign hammered into the ground. Their empire, once built on whispers and HOA dues, had collapsed into plywood boards and seized assets. At 9:00 a.m., Delgado visited one last time. He handed me a copy of the official press release. Charges finalized. Trial date will be set within 30 days. The evidence is overwhelming, thanks in large part to Noah's meticulous notes. Noah sat beside me, his hands folded on the table. His eyes still carried shadows from the tunnels, but there was strength in his posture now. "Will I have to testify?" "Yes," Delgado said gently. "But you won't be alone. And your testimony will be the nail in their coffin." Noah nodded, silent, but resolute. At 10:12, the HOA board convened under emergency bylaws. With Candace and Roger suspended, the remaining members voted unanimously to dissolve contracts with Greencrest and MC Social Solutions. residents packed into the community center, restless but attentive. I stood when called. For days, you believed rumors instead of facts. And it almost destroyed not just my family, but this community. Candace thrived because we let fear drown out logic. That ends today. The room was silent. Then Mrs. Patel rose, voice firm. I nominate Lauren Hale as interim treasurer. Applause followed, tentative at first, then swelling. I accepted, not out of pride, but duty. Numbers had always been my language, and now they would be my shield for the neighborhood. By noon, reporters carried new headlines. Maple Crest families take back control, and teen witness helps uncover HOA fraud. For once, the story wasn't written by Candace's lies. At 1:45, I walked with Noah to the lake cabin trail, the place where he had hidden when fear was louder than trust. He stopped by the old storage shed, staring at the sleeping bag still left in the corner. I thought if I stayed here, nobody could twist things against us, he said, but it just made them louder. I placed a hand on his shoulder. Hiding doesn't silence liars. Only the truth does. He nodded, slipping his notebook back into his backpack like a soldier sheathing a weapon. That evening, neighbors gathered informally on the greenbelt. Kids played again, cautious but free, their laughter chasing away the week's darkness. Some adults approached me with apologies, others with gratitude. No one mentioned Candace's name. Her power was gone. At 7:20 p.m., the sun dipped behind the houses, streaking the sky pink and gold. Mark grilled hot dogs for the first time since everything began. Noah sat on the porch steps, painting the last wing of his model airplane. When he held it up, complete at last, I felt the knot in my chest loosen. Later, as quiet settled over Maple Crest, I wrote the closing entry in my binder, fraud exposed, community reclaimed, justice pending. But I ended with a question, one I couldn't silence. Candace's last words still lingered. You don't know how deep it goes. Was she bluffing in desperation? Or was there truly another layer buried beneath HOA bylaws and falsified invoices? I looked out over the manicured lawns, the neat driveways, the identical mailboxes, all symbols of order that had masked corruption. The trial would bring justice, yes. But the greater battle was vigilance. And so I leave you with the same question that now echoes in every corner of Maple Crest. When faced with a choice, will you believe the loudest rumor, or will you fight to uncover the truth even if it means standing alone?